So as it's been a whole year since I started this YouTube channel, I thought it'd be fun to celebrate by trying something a little different and a little more unscripted. And so today I'm answering some of your questions and I'm going to try my best not to ramble too much. So before I start doing that now, let's get into it. Personally, I don't think I have any beliefs or views that would be considered to be religious. Like, I don't believe in any gods or an afterlife or anything like that. I used to believe in those things when I was younger, but as I got older throughout my teens, I started to really think about them more and question them. And the more I thought about it, the less and less sense they started to make to me. And eventually I just got to a point where I personally couldn't find any rational reason to continue believing in them. And so I guess that's when I became
an atheist.
However, despite being a godless heathen, I do honestly find the topic of religion really interesting. Like, I've watched so many religious debates on YouTube over the years, and I do genuinely enjoy having discussions with religious people, especially because people's religious beliefs can influence their ethical views. And to be honest, if it wasn't for my interest in religion, I probably wouldn't have gotten into philosophy in general and wouldn't have ended up starting this channel. So I actually owe religion a lot, despite not being a believer. There's some irony in there somewhere. So I started referring to myself as vegan in everyone's favourite year, 2020. But it wasn't a decision that I made overnight. It was something that I've been thinking about for a while and then just gradually transitioned towards. I'd always considered myself to be someone who was against animal cruelty, but because I was raised as a meat eater and everyone around me was a meat eater, I didn't really realise there was a conflict between those two things until around 2018, which was when I started getting into philosophy, and so I started questioning my own beliefs around, how we should treat animals and just my ethical views in general. So that's when I decided to go vegetarian, but I also decided to start educating myself on what animals actually go through on farms and sort of the wider consequences of animal farming in general. I realised that this was a bigger problem than just the meat industry. And because of that, I realised I should probably start swapping out more animal products for animal-free alternatives. And it eventually got to the point where I was avoiding animal products as much as I practically could. And so yeah, that's when I started referring to myself as a vegan. I do think it's important to mention though that I do have an ethical perspective that not all vegans agree with. And so while I do consider myself to be vegan, that doesn't mean that all vegans agree about ethics, nor does it mean that you need to agree with everything a vegan says in order for you to transition that way or in order for you to help animals. And I think it's important to encourage people to try and help animals in whatever way they can, whether or not they agree with vegans in general or with the principle of veganism. I think trying to push for progress in animal ethics is more important than the label, if you know what I mean. Following on pretty nicely from what I just said, generally speaking, I think reducing is a good thing. Obviously, I'd want to encourage reducers to continue reducing as much as they practically can, but given that some people do find it harder to change their lifestyle and change their diets than other people, some people might be on the spectrum and find it incredibly difficult to do so, I think that if those people can just reduce where they can, that's obviously still better than them doing nothing. Also, I think it's important to bring up that even if you can't completely eliminate animal products from your lifestyle, there are still ways you can help make the world a better place for animals that don't involve your consumption habits. For example, if you have money to spare every month, you can make monthly donations to effective animal charities, like the Humane League, who I've done a charity fundraiser for in the past. So if you'd be interested in doing that, then I definitely encourage you to do so, and there's a link in the description of this video if you'd like to make a donation. Obviously, as a consequentialist boy, I'd want to pick the option which has the best consequences for the animals, Looking at it from a purely supply and demand perspective, both options seem to be the same outcomes. I think what makes it interesting is that the supply and demand outcomes aren't the only consequences that we should be thinking about. Because, if you have 25% of the world's population willing to go completely vegan, that probably means those people are also willing to speak up against animal abuse or do other forms of activism or donate to animal charities, you know? And so I think if a quarter of the world's population was willing to do all of those things, we could make huge progress for animals, like, you know, shutting down slaughterhouses, abolishing factory farms. You know, we'd have more power politically to end a lot of these types of animal abuse, you know? Just instinctually, I'm going to go with the first option, which is that I think it might be better if 25% of the world's population was completely vegan, but I'm open to being convinced otherwise. Obviously, it goes without saying that whatever type of diet you decide to feed your child, you need to make sure they're getting all their essential nutrients so that they can be healthy. And I think there is a common assumption that feeding children plant-based diets won't give them all the essential nutrients they need, and that's why I think people tend to ask this question. But here's the thing. The NHS and countless dietetics associations around the world have all confirmed that you can get all essential nutrients from varied plant-based diets that contain foods fortified with vitamin B12. And so as long as a parent feeds their child a diet like this, what's the problem? And if you'd like a source for that claim, there's one in the description. This actually isn't the only argument I've heard for why it's cruel to feed kids plant-based diets, though. I've actually heard people suggest that it's wrong to feed children this way because the children aren't making the decision for themselves, and so the parents are forcing their views onto their children. But I actually find this argument really funny because, like, every parent on Earth is making decisions on behalf of their children because children are too young to understand nutrition or the consequences of their actions. No toddler makes an informed decision to be fed the bodies of animals who suffered in factory farms and slaughterhouses. Parents make this choice for them. I think it's obvious that most parents want to raise their children to become kind and compassionate people. And so I think that teaching them to be kind to animals and to avoid paying for them to be abused is just an extension of instilling that compassion into them. And if that's the case, then shouldn't we be encouraging more parents to raise their children on healthy plant-based diets? Favorite YouTubers. This is a fun one, so I think we'll end it on this one. I've been watching Rationality Rules and Alex O'Connor for about a decade now. They're definitely two of my favorite YouTube channels. If you're into philosophy or religious debate or like skepticism and logical argument type stuff, then definitely check them out. When it comes to animal ethics, veganism type content, then I'd recommend Humane Hancock and Earthling Ed. They've definitely influenced a lot of the stuff that I talk about on my channel, but they do it way better, so I definitely recommend checking them out. And I also really like cooking, so I watch a lot of cooking videos on YouTube, and so I'd recommend Derek Sarno if you want some plant-based recipes and to watch footage of him and his dog hanging out. It's quite wholesome. He includes that in a lot of his recipe videos, so yeah, those are my top 5 YouTube recommendations. So yeah, I think we'll make that one the last one. So before I end the video, I'd just like to say a huge thanks to everyone who's watched my videos and checked out my channel over the past year. When I first started this thing, I wasn't sure if anyone would be interested, so the fact that I've had so much engagement and I'm almost at 300 subscribers really does mean a lot, so thank you, I appreciate it massively. I haven't been able to post as regularly as I would like to recently, as things have just gotten a bit busy, but I'll hopefully be back with some more street interviews and some more bedroom philosophy pretty soon. But until then, as always, be kind to yourselves and be kind to animals. I'll see you in the next one.